This is the most popular incense burner in Southeast Asia. You can find them in Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and especially around old temples. But what's interesting is that it doesn't look like any traditional incense burner. It's more like a tool for torture. So why are they so popular? And why are they always placed near temples? Well, to understand that we need to go back to where they originated from. Funan was an ancient kingdom in the Mekong River Delta. The Funanese people were masters of bronze casting, and many artifacts have been found throughout the region, including this one, a bronze cauldron used to make offerings to the gods. But there is also another artifact that has survived through the ages, and that is the mined incense burner. It takes about a week for a stick of mined incense to burn down completely, and when the stick is lit, it produces a thick white smoke. In the past, the smoke was believed to drive out evil spirits from the home or business. Some believe that the smoke could purify the air, ward off insects, and even cure some illnesses. And that is why we still see them today in places where hygiene and sanitation are under best. They might not be the best-looking incense burners, but they sure do smell amazing. Today, they're mostly used for decoration, but back then, they were a very important part of the community. Funan is believed to have been founded around the 2nd century, and they were known for their incredible wealth. The Funan controlled the trade routes of the Mekong River and received goods such as spices, gold, silver, ivory, and precious stones from India, China, and Southeast Asia, and because of this, they had enough wealth to build large projects such as reservoirs, roads, and temples, and these projects required a lot of labor. In fact, according to Chinese records, Funan had an army of 30,000 soldiers, which means that they likely had an even bigger workforce for construction. And who provided the labor? Well, the Funanese didn't rely on slaves, since they were spread out across the region. Instead, they had a system where the king would grant land to a family in exchange for a portion of their crops. This system is still used today in some countries. It's called sharecropping. But eventually, the Funan lost control of the river trade, and their economy declined. And that's why we don't see as many artifacts from them. And that brings us back to the mined incense burner. We can find these all over Southeast Asia, but it's hard to tell if they were made in Funan or later. In fact, we don't know who started making them in the first place. But what we do know is that these were never used to make offerings to the gods. The design is too simple. There's no way that you could put a cauldron on top of it. And the reason why we see them near temples is because they were donated by worshippers. Today, we have donation boxes outside of temples. But back then, they didn't. So instead, they would simply leave their gifts nearby. But who would use something like this for incense? Well, it turns out that the answer lies in the shape of the burner itself. If we slice it open, we can see that it looks just like a human head. The eyes are right here, the nose is right here, and the mouth is right here. And when the incense is lit, the smoke comes out of the nostrils, which makes it look like the person is breathing. This is why you sometimes see two of them facing each other. It's like they're having a conversation. Now, these days, we associate incense with relaxation, meditation, and spirituality. But back then, it was used for something else. Communicating with the dead. In the past, it was believed that the smoke could carry messages between the living and the dead. That's why they're often placed at graves or near old cemeteries. Sometime during the Funan period, perhaps after they declined, people began worshipping the heads. They carved faces into the wood and gave them names. Then they would light up the incense and talk to them as if they were real people. At first, this might sound crazy, but you have to remember that this was during the time when animism was widespread. They believed that everything around them had a spirit inside of it. Trees, rocks, and even rivers. So it would be a stretch to say that they also believed that incense burners had spirits inside of them. And these weren't any ordinary spirits, they were the spirits of the ancestors. So who exactly were the Funan people? They believed that when someone died, their soul would become one with nature. They would wander the earth until it was time for them to reincarnate into a new body. So when someone lit up the incense, they were essentially lighting up a candle for their ancestors. It was a way to honor them and communicate with them. As the smoke rose up, it carried their prayers and wishes to the afterlife. Sometimes they would ask for guidance. Sometimes they would ask for protection. And sometimes they would simply tell them about their lives. And this practice wasn't just reserved for the Funan people. Many ethnic groups throughout Southeast Asia did the same thing with different artifacts. For example, the Hmong people of northern Thailand use these types of incense burners, while the Dao people of northern Laos use these types of stands. Now, these look more like torture devices, but they served the same purpose, to communicate with the dead. And they didn't just use them to talk to their ancestors, they also used them to talk to ghosts. These days we associate ghosts with Halloween, but in many cultures throughout Southeast Asia, ghosts are a serious matter. In fact, there's a whole month dedicated to them. Every year, towards the end of the year, Thai people will create altars for the homeless and wandering spirits, along with food and incense, and this is done to appease them. The last thing you want to do is upset a ghost, and that's why you sometimes see these incense burners in odd places. Maybe there was a ghost that liked to hang out there, or maybe someone had a run-in with a ghost and decided to make an offering. In some cases, entire villages will make offerings to the ghosts before starting a new project. It's better to be safe than sorry. So next time you see a weird-looking incense burner, don't be surprised if it has a ghost story behind it. Now, how did this practice end up in China? Well, that has a lot to do with Buddhism. When Buddhism came to China, they took some of the practices with them, like building stupas and pagodas, but they also brought something else, the worship of certain trees and plants. According to Buddhist beliefs, plants can attain enlightenment and become Buddhas themselves. That's why you sometimes see pagodas built around trees. So the Chinese began burning incense to pay homage to the tree, and this slowly turned into an art form. Eventually, people began carving the most intricate designs into the incense, and then they would burn them as a form of meditation. Today, you can find these all over Chinese temples. In fact, incense burning is such a big deal that they have an entire ceremony for it. It's called the burning of the incense, and it's performed to show respect to the Buddha. Not only does it symbolize the connection between heaven and earth, but it's also a reminder of the impermanence of life. As the incense burns away, it reminds the monks and the visitors that nothing lasts forever, and that's why they always burn 3 sticks of incense, to represent the past, the present, and the future. If you want to learn more about Asian history, stay tuned for more updates.